So, thank you everybody. Welcome to the afternoon session. Straight after lunch, got a good friend of mine, Flynn, who I met many years ago. Many years ago. When I think it's safe to say we were working together in a shamanistic sense.
Yes, we were.
We were, yep. Which was very enlightening.
Yeah.
And also gave me a lot of confidence and trust in the quality of space that you held through that time that we had together. So
thank you.
That was much appreciated.
Thank you.
And so it's a great pleasure. I welcome you here today to talk about what you've now moved and evolved into doing with people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, please put your hands together and welcome this afternoon, Flynn. Thank you, Flynn.
Thank you. Over the years since Stephen and I met, I have been through many changes, and what has fascinated me through those years is what's absorbed me, is what facilitates change, what makes change easier and what makes change difficult at times. Whether that's on a psychological level, a cognitive level, in what I think, what I feel, beliefs, or whether it's on an emotional level or a behavioural level, or whether it's in a somatic level within the body. And I started out in painting and sculpture because from a small age, what I could do is I could draw and I could make symbols. What I found very difficult was reading and writing, and it wasn't until secondary school that I learned to read and write. So for me, the world was very much a sensory place. I made sense of it through what I saw, through what I heard, through what I felt. And that has really stayed with me. And there are three things which have come together for me, which are crucial about change. And the first one is curiosity. The first one is simply being curious. Okay? Because if I'm curious, then I want to know about it. Yeah, I want to know, how does that work, and how does this go together? And because it's also a similar state to not knowing. And yet, I've done a lot of work in schools, and for a lot of school children, it's also true for us as adults. But for a lot of school children, not knowing is a stressful state. They're asked a question, and they go, "Oh, I don't know." And the implication is, I should know, you know? But curiosity is, I don't know, but I'd like to find out, yeah? You know, if you're going to tell me, you know, I can't wait to find out. So the curiosity is a similar state of not knowing, but it's with a willingness to find out, a willingness to explore. The second, it seems to me, the second state which is crucial to bringing about change is passion. And actually, if I get curious about something, and that is a state which I allow myself to sort of like enjoy, then I'm going to find out the things that I'm really interested in. And if I can find out the things that I'm really interested in, then I'm more likely to be passionate about it. Yeah? And so often, when I work with people over the years, that's either one-to-one or in groups like this, in schools, working with children, or working with adults, or working with families, it's about so much of the time, what has frustrated those children, adults, and families is that they've been asked to do things that they are not themselves absorbed in, fascinated in, interested in. Yeah, it might be good, might even be relevant, but I'm not interested in it. And a colleague of mine introduced me to this concept of what it is that fascinates us, what it is that captures our attention. And he used an acronym, which was RING, R-I-N-G. And R-I-N-G. And he said for something to absorb, for us to be interested in something, first of all, it has to be relevant. Excuse my spelling if I spell any of this wrong, okay? I'm going to say that from the word go. It has to be relevant, okay? So, it has to have some relevance for me, yeah? But it also has to be interesting. So not only does it have to be relevant, but I need to be interested in it. Because if something's relevant and I'm interested in it, then I'm a long way towards actually becoming really fascinated and passionate about it. And certainly when I work with children, one of the key things is just finding out what it is that they're really excited about. I remember working with this child once, and his parents asked me to work with him because his anger went from 0 to 60, and that's how they described it. And so I, started talking to him, and I said, "What is it? What do you really?" He said, "Well, I really like model sports cars." So I said, "Well, can you, have you got one you can show me?" And he went off and got this Lamborghini. And of course, Lamborghinis go from 0 to 60 in real. So we used a lot of the metaphors around gears, changing, braking, fuel, injection. And then we could talk about breathing, and we could talk about motor skills in the context of something he was absolutely fascinated by. The next bit on here is, surprise, you may be surprised, you may not, and this is certainly something that children really love. It has to be naughty. Because as soon as something's naughty, then, you get the giggle like we just got then. Yeah? But it's kind of, ooh, right, there's a bit of an edge to it, there's a bit of a sort of... And the last one is it has to be a giggle. Okay? Now, when I talked about this in schools and that, it was like bringing water to a parched plant. It was kind of like... Because actually, if in schools, and in the best schools this is the case actually, the information that's given is relevant, it's made interesting to the pupil. It is a little bit naughty as well, there's sort of like, nowadays they have wet play. My son goes out into muddy play, and they're encouraged to play in the mud, yeah? When I was a child, and I played football, and when I was a child, I was quite overweight, because I just ate everything that I could see. I was put in goal, and in goal, the object is to stop the ball going in the net, so it does involve getting dirty, and I used to get home, my mother used to say, "Have you been throwing yourself in the mud?" And I'd say, "Well, yeah, that's what a goalkeeper does." But nowadays in schools, they're encouraged to do that. In one school, when I was talking to a head teacher, she said that she used to bury the books in the ground. And the children then had to dig them out. And in digging them out and retrieving these books, they were more likely to want to read them and to look what was inside them. Other times they were put in trees, so they had to climb the tree to get to the book. Now for years we've been thinking of this approach with animals in zoos. We've been putting food where they have to actually sort of clamber up to get it. Fortunately, it's now, people are beginning to see this would be a good idea with children as well. Susan Greenfeld, who, she was doing a keynote speech once, and we were following her on a keynote speech. Imagine that, right? For those of you who might not know who she is, she's a neuroscientist, and she's like, on Radio 4 and BBC, and everybody knows her, and she's got a wild sense of dress. She's fantastic. She came out with this dress on. She looked like a sort of Quality Street or something like that, And she said, well, how come over the years humour has remained something that we've held on to? Because actually it's a bit of a risk, if you're being hunted by an animal and you end up sort of like in hysterics, you give your place away, But what she said was that what it does is humour wipes the slate, And what I like about it is that you're going along in one direction like this, and then all of a sudden, a joke or humour introduces another direction that takes you off in another direction. And so that's why it's so crucial, yeah? And what was he called? I think it was Norman Cousins. He actually decided that rather than going for a lot of invasive therapy, what he was going to do, even if it was going to be his last few weeks, he was going to book himself into a hotel and he was going to rent as many comedy films that he could get his hands on, And that's what he did. And he just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And he claims that was a really important part of his recovery. So it has to be relevant, interesting, naughty, and a bit of a giggle. So I hope that for the rest of the time that I've got, this presentation will be all of those. and that you'll take away from it something interesting and something relevant and maybe even a little bit naughty. So, but one of the things which I think makes change difficult is habit. We become familiar with doing things one way. So we get dressed in the same order in the morning. We brush our teeth with the same hand. For many years now, I've been brushing my teeth with my other hand occasionally. I've gone back to writing with my left hand because I started writing with my left hand in the first place, but then it was discouraged by my father, who thought it was something to do, you know, like with the devil or something like that, growing up in a Catholic family, you know. And so one of the ways to introduce change, big change, is to introduce small change. So it's like, well, what would it be like if I was to eat my cereal? You know, which is a good place to start, I found, because it's, you know, with my other hand. What would that feel like? What would my brain say? What would I be saying to myself? And then, what would it be like to try and brush my teeth with the other hand, which calls for more coordination, yeah? And then, occasionally, when I've got a bit of time, and I'm not sort of in a hurry, what would it be like to start to write with my other hand? Now, if you think about it, writing is a series of movements that we've got used to, and we've become very coordinated about. But it involves quite a lot of coordination between hand and eye and shoulder and body and everything. When you start to write with the hand that you're unfamiliar with, then it seems to have a mind of its own. And so if you want to develop the ability to write with your other hand, what I encourage you to do is get a big sheet of paper and just enjoy making lines. Yeah? And enjoy making sort of playing with that, and then making big letters and smaller letters and smaller letters. And that's the process I went through, and I can now write with my other hand if I wanted to. Okay, so I'm going to show you an equation. What I'd like you to say, you can just call out, yeah, is what I need to do in order to make the equation make sense. Okay? So, first thing, when I go into school, we used to go into schools and do this, the first thing that was apparent was that not all children are familiar with Roman numerals anymore. Yeah? But if you are familiar with Roman numerals, then x has the value of 10. So 11 plus 1 equals 10. So what do I need to do in order to make that equation make sense? Change it to a minus, yeah? I could change this to a minus, couldn't I? Yeah? Yeah? What else could I do? X minus 2. Yeah? Put a what, sorry? Put 2 1s at the end. Now all of those things is I'm doing something to it. What can I do in order to make that equation make sense?
Accept it.
You could accept it, yeah. And that's radical, yeah? And you could say, I accept that. And I just sort of like, and then your whole world could possibly change, yeah? Something I can do which is perhaps equally radical is try looking at it upside down. What is it then? Yeah? Then it's 10 equals 1 plus 9. Yeah? And it suddenly makes sense because I've turned the world upside down. I've looked at things from a different perspective. Yeah? I've maybe even stood on my head. Sometimes change, if we want change, yeah, Paul Wasilewicz, that's a lovely name. I wish that was my last name, you know. Imagine Sean Wasilewicz. I'd love that. Paul Wasilewicz wrote a book called Change, and he talks about first order and second order change. Now, first order change is you decide you're going to sort of redecorate at home, yeah? You might even move a bit of the furniture around. Second order change would be asking yourself, well, do I want to live in a house? You know? Maybe, what if I lived on a barge? There's someone in the front here who's just been asking themselves that question, yeah? Yeah. Or what, do I want to live in this country anymore? Do I want to be nomadic? And that's second order change. That's big change, yeah? Then those kind of questions lead to massive change. So that's first order change. So if you've got a piece of paper, and if you haven't got a piece of paper, just hold your hand up. I'll give you a piece of paper. Okay, anywhere on that sheet of paper, draw a line. An L-I-N-E. Anywhere on that sheet of paper, okay? Any size, anywhere. Just with the hands up, how many people have drawn a straight line? Oh, yes. I love it, I love it. Why? Yeah, why? When it could have been any shaped line.
You didn't say any line. You didn't put a word in that said any kind of line.
No, I didn't. What did I do?
You said a line.
A line. And I drew your attention. Yeah. Non-verbally. Non-verbally, I said draw a line. A-L-I-N. Yeah. And L-I-N. Yes. How many people, when I said L-I-N-E on their wonderful screen in our heads, saw line written in block capitals? Yes. Yeah? Probably a black line as well. Yeah? It's so strong. It's so powerful. This is what we're kind of, it's how the brain works. Yeah? So there you go. Yeah? There you go. When you could have drawn any quality of line, but I influenced you. Not only that, what have we been doing and talking about? What's the quality of line here? Straight lines. Okay? Straight lines that have value, straight lines that make sense. Straight lines make sense. Why would I draw a curly line? Yeah? When a straight line gets me from A to B in a quicker. Yeah? Because I'm that kind of guy. You know? I don't want to mess about going this way and that way. But given that I influenced you that time, and it could have been any quality of line, on the same sheet of paper, draw another line. Okay? Yes, yes! Now, I told you I was influencing, right? I'd rectangles and all this business, and then I go and ask you to draw another line. So some of you will have said, I'm really glad that you reminded me about that, because I don't know why I drew a straight line, because I like curvy lines. I like spirals. I like lines that go like this. Others among you will have said, I know what your game is, right? I'm going to draw another straight line. Because I know what you want me to do. And I'm not so easily manipulated. So then we get into, what do I do now? Because, kind of like, I don't know why I drew a straight line in the first place, but now he wants me to draw, you know what he wants me to do? He wants me to draw a wiggly line, but I'm going to draw another straight line, yeah? Because I'm that kind of a guy. I'm the same, the person I am on a Monday is the person I am on a Sunday. I don't have peaks and troughs. I just go like that from one place to the other. Consistency is the name of the game, actually. You can talk about change as much as you like. Actually, it's about doing something which you know that works and keep doing it, even if it doesn't work. It will eventually. No, it won't. So then you're in a bit of a quandary. Well, now we're at an interesting point, because I'm going to ask you to draw on the same sheet of paper. I'm going to ask you to ask yourselves what you want to do and draw a third line on that sheet of paper. So what do you do now, right? What do you do now? Do you hang on to your conviction that as long as this pen has ink in it, I'm going to keep drawing straight lines? Whatever you ask me, I'm going to keep doing it. Or do you sort of like say, well, he seems a nice kind of guy, you know, and the evening's going well, we have a nice lunch. Now I'll start drawing curvy lines, yeah? We were doing this to a group of people, and as was my wont at the time, I was on a chair, you know, so I was high up like this, and I could look and I could see what some of the people were doing. And this one woman, she'd gone like that, as many of you did for the first line. For the second line, she went, and she drew another straight line like that. And then when it came to the third line, it was like, no hesitation, absolutely no hesitation. And I think by the time she got to this third line, she drew that line for all women, right? Who have ever been in a situation where this stranger, this man, comes into their place, their workplace, and starts telling them what to do. It's like, you know, you've got to be joking. She would have drawn, I think, continues to draw straight lines, you know, because she's known that women have thrown themselves under horses in the past to sort of like be able to decide what they want to do. Draw a line. Yeah, to where they draw the line. And but I then asked a question, which I'll ask you now. If you look at those lines that you've drawn, with the addition of another line or a thought or a completely different context, do they remind you of anything? Yeah? And sometimes it's with the addition of a little thing there, or a curve, or a sun up in the corner, or something like that, or maybe it's a landscape or something, you know? For this woman, she looked at those three lines and she went, ah! And then she went, and she couldn't help herself. She drew the most beautiful, wiggly, curly, cursive line. Yeah? But in that moment, it made sense to her. It was interesting to her. She'd stepped into a context that made sense for her. Okay? And she forgot about me. She forgot about sort of like influence and all this. And it meant music to her. And I bet she even heard music, her favorite piece of music playing in her head. Yeah? If you bring your hands together like this. Okay, now, I was raised as a very good Roman Catholic, but we're not here at this point to pray, though if you feel so inclined. But just notice which thumb is on top, okay? Now, take the hands apart, bring them back together and put the other thumb on top so the fingers lace different. What does that feel like? Not right. It's just wrong, isn't it, eh? Anybody else? What does it feel like? Different. Uncomfortable.
Once you've undone the hand, it's actually quite difficult to work out how to do it the other way.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to then suddenly start thinking about something that actually you didn't even think about before. What it illustrates is that our sense of right and wrong is based upon what's familiar. Yeah? So it even then starts to come into massive beliefs, belief systems. I can't do that because it's wrong. Well, I can't do that because actually it's not what I usually do. It's unfamiliar. It's uncomfortable. It's kind of, you know, a child can say, "Can I have a drink?" You just had a drink. Yeah, but I'm thirsty. No, you're not. You know, it's kind of, then that child's in a real sort of quandary, aren't they? It's kind of like, well, my body is telling me that it's thirsty, okay? Probably because some salt you put in the meal or something like that. Or maybe I'm just thirsty today. But then they have to go away and they have to think, well, actually, they're my mum or they're my dad or they're my teacher. They know best, yeah? And with that equation thing, if a child's bringing it to you that way and you're seeing it the other way, it doesn't make sense to you, but it makes perfect sense to them. Yeah? So someone's behavior will make sense to them. Now, change, if change on this level feels unfamiliar, wrong, uncomfortable, then when we start to want to make changes in our thinking, which is attached to our belief system, in our emotional processing, in our behavior, and on a somatic level, as you'll find out in the next presentation, we're up against some really sort of like ingrained and embodied patterns of behavior. Yeah? So it could be said that we process things on a cognitive thinking level, an emotional level, and a sensory motor level. That means the body level. And on a body level, we're taking in information through our senses all the time. Whether you realize it or not, each one of you, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is like a radar, and it goes and it's checking the environment 24/7. And every one of you right now is checking that out. It's the reason why you're not falling over sideways onto the floor. Your vestibular system is checking out where you are in space and the tiny adjustments your body has to make. And all those things are happening without you even being aware of it. In fact, most of the decisions that are taken without us being aware of it. Okay? So a key element to enabling change is awareness. It's becoming aware. Yeah? And then becoming aware with a curiosity rather than judgment. So I become aware, I become curious about myself, I become curious about my pattern, my habits, I become curious about the way I walk. For instance, most of us walk down the street pretty much like that, yeah? Now we could walk down the street. We could walk down the street in lots of different ways. You know, we could move from one side to the other side, like Jeremy Fisher. But we don't. But why not? Why not? Yeah. So change may alienate you from others. So now you've introduced a really, really important point. Thank you. And that is that change is not only, for us to make changes, it's not only about what's happening inside of us and in our world, but we are in relationship with others. So it's my relationships. If I change, what are they going to say? Yeah? So, and it's my environment as well. So if I change, what effect, what impact's that going to have on my environment? A really interesting guy called Stephen Porges, okay? P-O-R-G-E-S. Porges. I call him Porgs, but he's not called Porgs apparently. It's Porges. And he wrote a book called The Polyvagal Theory, right? Now what he introduces is a sort of like, it takes the idea of the fight and flight. That is, if we're in a stressful situation, I have two options. I fight or I flight. Some of us know, well, no, you've got freeze as well. You can go, you know, like a rabbit in a car headlight, okay? What Porges introduced was, through his work, he has said that there is a nerve from the cranial nerve, that this nerve, its pathway innervates the facial muscles, it innervates the throat, the voice, the mouth, it innervates the chest, the heart, the lungs, and the gut. Now, the social interaction that you're talking about, and you were talking about as well, because if I go down the street like this, then they'll either think, oh, well, he's a happy guy, you know, or he's got a mental health problem, you know, and people will just sort of go like that. You know, don't they? Oh, they go, no, go away, come on. I can tell you from experience, because I thought, what will be the people's, not to provoke a reaction, but just thinking, I've walked like this most of my life, you know? Get back to this thing of social interaction. Now, the ventral aspect of the polyvagal nerve, is that it helps us with social interaction. Okay? So it innervates the muscles of the face. So when we look at people, eye contact, we use our voice, the quality of our voice helps to maintain social interaction. Yeah? So it might be a different thing if I was to sort of like skip down the street like this. You know, breathing with a breathing pattern. Actually, sometimes you do see people going down the street like that, and that's sort of like from side to side, swaying from side to side, you know? It's kind of like the walk is like that, and it's kind of, it's almost like the body is actually sort of weighing something up, you know? And, or if I skip down the street like this, you know, because it's going to have a different impact. But when we're in a stressful situation and we try that and it doesn't work, you know, I can see someone coming towards me who's like just decided they want to hit me, and I'm kind of going, and it doesn't work. Then quickly that gets shut down, and in comes fight and flight. And it depends upon my previous experiences as to whether I'm then going to sort of like rise up, you know, or whether I'm going to run, or whether I'm going to freeze and sort of lie on the ground like this. Yeah? And and actually our choice around that depends upon the attachment that we formed when we were little. Now what we now know, which is brilliant, is that the forms of attachment we form when we're little we can actually do a lot about them. It's not like, well, you've missed your window of opportunity now. You know, what a shame. It's a pity you didn't come back 30 odd years ago or something. You know? But no, there's a lot you can do, okay? So the forms of attachment are sort of like secure attachment, and then there's insecure attachment, and then there's insecure avoidant attachment, and there's insecure ambivalent attachment. And there's even another one now, which is disorganized attachment, okay? So if I've got a secure attachment, then I'm more likely to be able to sort of, within a window of opportunity, an optimal zone, I'm going to be able to deal with stress without it sending me off into fight or flight, which is hyperarousal, or I'm going to avoid going into complete shutdown, which is down here, yeah? Playing possum. I'm going to be able to stay in the moment. I mean, that now is a real buzzword, isn't it? You know, everywhere. It's mindfulness, staying in the moment, being with what is. I've just got to stay in the moment, be with what, you know, I mustn't think about. As long as I don't think about it, that'll be, you know. But actually, the moment you tell yourself not to think about something, or you deny something, or push it away. So someone who said acceptance, I could accept that equation makes sense. Acceptance is a big part of change, yeah? Yeah, because they've done psychological experiments where they've asked psychology students, you know, sort of like, if someone is a complete stranger, but they're wearing the same top as your football team, then you're actually more likely to help them. They're a complete stranger, but if they're wearing the top of the opposite team, then you may be helping them in a different way, you know. Another guy in America called John Barr, fascinating bloke, B-A-R-R-R-R. I don't know how you spell his name. And he did these experiments where he wanted to know, so again, psychology students, so they know what they were up against. It wasn't sort of like unethical or anything like that. Would you please take part in an experiment where you're going to go and meet someone and talk to them in the room, and then afterwards you'll just be asked a few questions as to whether you thought, you know, what kind of a person they were, okay? So the students said, yeah, that's fine. What they didn't know was that they would be met in the lift, so it was on the 3rd floor. They were met at the lift down at the 1st floor with a man with a clipboard, and who simply just needed to tick them off and ask them again, are you sure you're happy to do this? So they got into the lift, and he said, can you just hold that? He said, right, so you're happy to do this? Yep, great, thanks, I'll take that back. You just go down the corridor, and it's the room on the second on the left, yeah? Now, what they didn't realize was that half the people were given a hot cup of coffee and half the people were given iced coffee. Okay? So half the people had a warm drink and half the people had a cold drink. And the questions they were asked was whether they thought that person was a warm person, or whether they had a cold personality. The correlation between whether they were given a cold drink and them saying they were cold, I would not employ that person, was between 88 and 92%. Equally, the people who said, yeah, they're a lovely person, really warm, I don't know what it was about them, I'd definitely employ them, and responded to them very friendly. Correlation was they were the ones that were given the warm cup of coffee. So experience that we have before we have another experience primes us into that experience. Okay? Sometimes habit, that's what habit is. So if we're going to bring about change, what can we do to bring about change? Well, we can cultivate a sense of curiosity. Okay? We can allow ourselves to begin to get really kind of like connected with whatever it is that we're connected with. Even if, everybody else in our family or our friends think, oh, this is really weird, he started eating all this funny stuff, then we become passionate about it. If we become passionate about it, we're going to be releasing all sorts of positive endorphins, opiates into our system. We're going to be firing off that ventral system of the polyvagal nerve, which means that we're going to be managing our arousal. We're going to be keeping our heart in a nice sort of relaxed, optimum state. Breathing's going to be sort of more efficient. Muscle tension is going to be reduced. We're actually going to be able to be more responsive to others and our environment. So maybe we'll even make connections with people which might well be beneficial for us. And we tend to sort of look for what we're already sort of fascinated about and what we're already looking for. To finish with, I want to just, because I'm aware of the time, I just want to end with another little game, okay? And but what I really wanted to sort of talk about, or begin to talk about today, was just this idea that habit, I've always done it like that, plays a big part in making it difficult for us to change. Because if my identity is in the fact that I'm a straight line guy, I don't have peaks and troughs, I don't go up and down, I don't go all around the houses, why would I do that? Then my identity is bound into that. So I'm going to be then sort of like thinking, well, if I make those changes, if I start skipping down the street like this, I won't even know myself, let alone. And you see this a lot in schools, because you see kids, who gain a little bit of confidence. People go, oh yeah, who do you think you are? What are you up to? Get down, you know your place. And in a family, if you're born first, you have your place. If you're born last, you have your place. And I was born last, down there. Habit. Well, one way in which we can begin to introduce big change, is start to introduce little change. Take a few risks. And that's what creativity is, yeah? Because if you put curiosity and passion together, it leads to creativity. Because if I'm curious, well, how does that, that's, wow, I'm really fired up about it. Then, yeah, but how else could it be? Why like that? Why not like this? Why not turn it upside down? So I found that, the drawing and painting, that's one way of creativity, but you can live your life creatively. And what I'm talking about is I'm living life moment by moment creatively. Yeah? So that actually, people that I work with have said to me, my body feels completely different. It's just, and it's not just on a psychological level that things have changed, or an emotional processing level, but on what I call when I've experienced that, is a cellular level. It feels whoa. And Stephen practices Tai Chi. And when you practice Tai Chi and you feel the Chi flowing through, or in the acupuncture that Stephen practices, and you feel the Chi moving through, or the body opening, the energy gates of the body opening, it feels so, it's like a state of bliss. So, just to end with a little game, which is about what we expect to see, and creativity, and it's a bit of a giggle, okay? So remember that an acronym. And I'm trying to remember the name of the wonderful guy who worked in education for many years, Roy Layton. It was his acronym, Roy Layton, the ring. And he asked me to say Roy Layton 3 times whenever I use the ring. Some of you may remember, a lot of you won't, okay? But I'm old enough to remember there was a television program called I'll Name That Tune, okay? Now, what happened on I'll Name That Tune is someone sat at a piano and 2 contestants, and they said, well, I'll name that tune in 4. And someone said, well, I'll name that tune in 2. And do you know what? Once, someone said, I'll name that tune in 1. And I'm going, how can you name it in 1? But the pianist went, dunk, and he named it and he got it. Now, I'm really naive, I'm thinking, how did he do that? It's probably rigged or something like that, but I don't know, maybe it wasn't. Maybe he got it, maybe it was just good fortune or something. But in the absence of a piano, I'm going to draw, okay? Because I can't play the piano anyway. We'd be here for hours, wouldn't we? Anyway, I'm going to draw a line, and I want you to tell me, just shout it out, what you think it is that I'm drawing, okay? A line. Did you say a line? Oh, well done. Yes. Yes, it's a line. Next. No. Oh, I have, yeah. Otherwise it wouldn't be fair.
No, I just checked.
Yeah. You're beginning to doubt whether, what limits I have, if I have any at all, aren't you? Does reason play any part in my life? Pardon? A Chinese character. A tree. Pardon? Mary Kwan. You see, all these, you see, what you're doing is a really sophisticated thing. You're going through all the images you've ever seen.
And a man leaning over a balcony.
And a man leaning over a balcony, it's getting fantastic. No, it's not. No.
A person, a face, and a top of the body.
No.
A rocket.
A rocket. Who said a rocket? Yes. Can you see it now? Yeah? But how many of you now know it's a rocket have gone, all right, okay. What time is it now? Curiosity. Now I've got my answer. Now I know what it is. And I don't need to draw the rest of it in, do I, really? I could do. You could draw, yeah. If you want a cup of coffee afterwards, yeah, keep drawing. Okay, so that's a rocket. Eh?
Pie chart.
No.
Pizza.
Pie chart, pizza, no. Pardon?
A motor car.
It's a motor car.
A motor car.
Yeah, motor car.
What kind of motor car?
Volkswagen.
A Volkswagen, yes.
Or Morris Minor.
Or a Morris Minor, yes. Or a bubble car. Yeah? Yeah? Cool, you're getting better at it. please. Please. No, it's not Bridget Bardot. Now, most of you, I would imagine you're kind of going, I don't believe this. You know? Where's Willie? Yeah? No.
Draw someone else.
I know what you're thinking it is.
Draw someone else. Thank you.
Now you're saying, I'm convinced it's what you think it is.
The bird.
No.
Plane.
No.
Superman.
well, you might say it's quite Superman, really, I suppose.
Didn't see his eyebrow. Bird.
No. No.
It's a mouse upside down.
Yes. Who said that? Yes. It's a mouse upside down. Now, a lot of you will have struggled to get that. One, because I started off with this, and once you're sort of fixed on, it is, right? He's talked about it being naughty, right? With sixth formers, this goes down really well, you know. But it is. It's a mouse upside down. So we get used to seeing things, and we get used to seeing them in an orientation. Yeah? We expect, because my other drawings were that other way up, you know, it's kind of like, well, it's got to be the other way up. So our senses, actually, do you know, it's been calculated that what you're now seeing is only made up of 20% of the information coming in through your eyes. The other 80% is what you've previously experienced, what you expect to see, and that you're filling it in. Do you know that your eyes here cannot see colour? It's just black and white. Colour is in this bit, okay? But we fill the colour in. We remember it. As we look around the room, you know, you're sort of not shifting from colour to black and white to colour to black and white. The way that we have developed prioritizes habit. Yeah? It prioritizes the sort of expectation that tomorrow is going to be like today, you know. Now that's fine if you're living a really happy, comfortable life, but if you're experiencing pain or if you're experiencing psychological distress or you're depressed, then it's really, you know, it doesn't help. And maybe some of what we've done in this shortish talk, is to introduce the idea that if you can develop your curiosity, allow yourself to be passionate, yeah? But develop your passion, because curiosity and passion lead to creativity. And creativity is about doing things differently. Thank you very much.
Thank you.